time for another ride on the Groove Line, and I got some special guests with us on the train today. I have the drummer and co-founder of the one of the greatest jazz groups to come out of Philadelphia, and his saxophonist, Curtis Harmon and Tony Watson Jr. Together, they make up Pieces of a Dream. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
What's happening, Chris? How you doing?
Thank you guys for coming on. Greatly appreciate it. So we need to start off by talking about the most recent thing you guys released last spring, and that's the album We Got This. And I had a chance to listen to it before we came on, and I just came away impressed that after all of these years, you guys are still sharp. You guys are still tight. Like, what was the making of that album like, for you guys, getting back in the studio and putting something together for people to enjoy?
I think it was, well, it was a couple of things. It was definitely educational for us. And it was a little bit of a trial because of James's illness at the time. So, Tony and I had to pull together and actually finish the album because we were expecting more songs from James. But like I said, due to his illness, we had to kind of have his back and put the rest of the album together. But Tony and I have been writing for, oh my gosh, pretty much almost since he's been in the band. So, we've had at least one song that we wrote together go to number 3 on the Billboard charts and stay there for like 13 weeks. So we're like, we're not new to each other as far as writing is concerned. So we just put our best foot forward and got it done, man. And that's kind of it. That kind of tells you about the name of the album, and that's called We Got This, because we got this.
Yeah. And Tony?
Yeah, it was like you said, we had some issues. James had some health issues, and really took a toll on him. So he couldn't write normally like he normally does, as many songs on this album. So yeah, Kurt and I took it upon ourselves. We said, listen, we're going to write as many songs as possible. And James, when you get better, if you're able to, we'll just throw your songs in there and take some songs out. And the great thing about this group is we've been together for so long, especially James and Kurt, and I've been here for 16 years. Even the songs that James brought in, that he hadn't even heard our songs yet. And he wrote some songs to come into the album, and they blended on the album with what we wrote perfectly, and that's because we know how each other writes and what we like and things like that. So we, like Kurt said, we got this, but I think it's also a testament to the brotherhood and the synergy that we all have, the three of us have.
Right. And you guys are still, hitting the road even to this day. You guys just got back from a gig this weekend. So when you guys are still out there touring, I know, Tony, you're not, you've been here long enough, but Curtis has been there since the beginning. Like, what's that feeling like for either of you guys to know that after all of these years, people are still excited to see, not just Pieces of a Dream, but people in your peer group? Because I know a lot of you guys, you tour with other jazz artists, R&B artists, and the old school shows are always sold out. Me and my mom, we go to the Dell every summer in Philly. We don't miss a Dell summer concert series for nothing. So just how exciting is it to know that after all of these years, people are still excited to see you all perform?
Well, first off, I think it's a great blessing. God has blessed us with a talent that never dies out, So, I feel very blessed that we were able to last so long and have such a longevity. It's also a testament to how true our fans are to us, and then believe me, we thank God for our fans, and we are just so blessed to have a fan base that has kept us relevant for so long. We're entering into our 50th year now, so our golden anniversary. So we're trying to make this, something big, as we move through this year. So, but I just think it's a blessing.
Yeah, it's definitely a blessing. Like I said, I've been with the group for 16 years, and I've seen how much our friends, fans, and family, group. And yes, our 50th anniversary. And, I like to tell people Pieces of a Dream has been together for 50 years, and it's been 50 years of musical excellence. I think we all can just kind of think back to all the hits, the 454s, the Mount Airy Grooves, things like that. And they always hit. I think that since Pieces always shows up for their fans. The fans always show up for Pieces.
And that is something I wanted to, jump into, because when I was doing my research for this, I was whatever day I was years old when I found out that there was a video for 454. Like, that absolutely blew my mind. Curtis, I know that, this was the last time the Sixers won a championship. Now, mind you, I as a Sixers fan, I can't claim it myself because I wasn't even quite 2 years old the last time they won it. But
right.
I have to know the backstory behind 454. How did that all come together?
Well, Dr. J and Grover were such good friends that and well, yeah, they were actually, very tight. And we were, since we were tight with Grover and happened to be doing an album at the time right after they won that championship, Grover thought that it would be, apropos to actually have a song for, the 76ers and Philadelphia to celebrate the winning of the championship in 4 games, 5 games, and 4 games. Moses Malone, as you might know, said it 5 in 444 at first. So, but excuse me, I'm sorry.
No problem.
He said, let me turn this down and off. Actually, he said it that they were going to win it in 444, but they ended up winning it in 454. So, and we actually have Moses Malone on the record saying 454.
Yeah, I wondered if that was his voice, because it sounded deep enough to be him. I wasn't sure, but do you remember anything about the music video? Because I know there's a part in the beginning where you, James, and the late Cedric Napoleon,
we're playing the lottery.
Yeah, like you're walking down the street and there's this lady with the crystal ball, like just what
and stuff.
What do you remember about shooting that video?
I remember it was a lot of fun. We had never actually been actors in anything, so that was our first taste of what it felt like to actually act, even though we didn't actually have to remember any lines or anything. All we had to do was go through the motions, but it was such fun. The production crew was fun to deal with, and the lady reading the crystal ball, even though it says that she's reading palms, actually she is reading somebody's palm, and I think it might be Cedric or mine at the beginning before she looks into the crystal ball. And then we move into the store and play the lottery. And then I remember we tore up the tickets. And the number, actually, the guy changed the paper with the actual that day's number on it, and it was 454, but we had torn up the tickets already. So it was just a whole storyline behind that. And then I remember the meter. The meter for the parking meter said 454 on it and everything. So it was just fun. It was just fun to make.
And let's go back to the beginning if we can. You said this is your 50th anniversary. So you guys started in 76. Like, how did you, James, and Cedric all meet?
We met in Ada Lewis Middle School. I was 13. James was 11. Cedric and I both were 13. We were actually only 11 days apart in age. So Cedric and I were 13. James was 11. And there was a talent show that was getting ready to happen. We also were part of the middle school jazz band headed by Tony Williams, a very well-known sax player around Philadelphia. And we were going to kind of separated us. We kind of picked the core pieces from that jazz band to do the talent show. And so we did the talent show. Cedric and I met James. He was playing for our music teacher on the piano. I think he was playing Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and Tennille. And we were just in awe of how he was playing and what he was playing. Then he went into some classical stuff, and we were like, this kid can play. So we ended up asking him to do the talent show with us. And so it was 6 of us at the time, 3 horn players. We ended up taking 3rd place to a Billie Holiday impression and a dance routine. But everybody loved what we played. We ended up playing Happy Music from Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds and Reasons by Earth, Wind, and Fire. and it went off. It went off really well. And then my father, Danny Harmon, who was a well-known vibist around Philadelphia, kind of took an interest in us and had us rehearsing in the in our basement, and he had us listening to people like the MJQs, the Three Sounds, Oscar Peterson, Ahmad Jamal, Miles Davis, people like that, Ramsey Lewis. And so we actually got an education on what real jazz sounded like, as far as swing and bossa novas and Latin type rhythms and stuff. So we ended up doing dinner dances with my father's group. We would play the intermissions, and then it got so that, as my father says, it got so that they wanted to hear more of us than his band, because being of the ages that we were fans of groups like Earth, Wind and Fire, Commodores, Gat Van, Parliament Funkadelic. So we could actually play that stuff also. So we were kind of a well-rounded band, and that's how we grew.
So I understand your name comes from a piece that was done by Stanley Turrentine, Pieces of Dreams.
Stanley Turrentine, yep.
Yeah. Who where did you guys have like a huge discussion about it, or was it just something that you guys just felt like you all agreed on that just fit at that time?
No, actually, my stepmother, Deanna Harmon, came up with that name, Pieces of a Dream. And she took it from Stanley Turrentine's song, Pieces of Dreams. And she felt there were three guys looking for a musical dream, and we made up the pieces. But when we first heard the name, we thought it was kind of lengthy and didn't really like it that much. So, Earth, Wind, and Fire was probably the longest band name we had heard at the time. You know what I mean? Everybody else had names like the Gat Band, Commodores, Parliament, Funkadelic, what these one-word names like that. And so actually, when we actually did the talent show, we had named ourselves Galaxy. And so that name was not really apropos for what we actually sounded like, playing swing music and, being as well-rounded as musicians as we were. So we went through an array of names, Touch of Class, Classic Touch, Sound Unlimited Part 2. And somebody had all those names. Somebody else had all those names. So we ended up, then my stepmother came up with Pieces of a Dream. And even though we didn't like it, it became a household word around Philadelphia, Baltimore, Delaware, Chester, So it grew on us, and it grew on everybody else too.
So yeah. So where does the Grover Washington Jr. connection come in for you guys? Because I know he produced the first 3 albums you guys did for Elektra. Like, how did you guys meet Grover? How did that all come about?
First, we went to see him at the Schubert Theater, and we didn't actually meet him at that point, but we knew of him. We ended up doing a TV show called City Lights in Philadelphia, and we were the house band for 13 weeks. At this point, we were probably about, James was 14 and I was 16. Cedric and I were 16, and Grover, the show had a lot of different talents come on and everything, and Grover was in one of the slots of the show. And so we were basically the house band. So we were doing the lead theme, which was we did Rise by Herb Alpert as the lead theme of the show, and then we would do the in and out music from commercials and stuff. And so when Grover was getting ready to come up, he had a track that he was going to play to. But then he heard us play and said, well, I want to play with them. So he asked us if we knew Mr. Magic. And at that time, Wine Light had just been released. So we knew Mr. Magic. We knew a little bit of Wine Light. So we ended up doing those 2 songs, and it came off really well. And then about a couple months after that, we ended up playing at the Bijou Cafe where he did his live album. And he surprised everyone and showed up and played a couple of songs with us, and then announced he was starting a production company, and we were going to be his first product.
Wow. As teenagers, working with Grover Washington Jr., I did a retrospective episode on Knucklehead, which is probably my favorite Grover Washington song. And
Okay.
just listening and knowing what he meant to the community. He had adopted Philadelphia as his
Mm-hmm.
hometown.
Oh, yes, he did.
And I know Wine Light was like a dedication to Dr. J at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, just what was that like for you guys?
Actually, I think "Let It Flow" was the dedication.
Oh yeah, Let It Flow. I'm
You let
sorry.
it flow. Yep,
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
dedication to Dr.
So
J.
when you guys are teenagers and Grover Washington Jr. says, "I'm gonna sign you guys," just what is the feeling like? I mean, you just take me through that moment.
Well, the initial feeling, since we were actually on stage when he said that, our jaws dropped to the ground first, and then we looked at each other like, we're gonna make an album, you know. So after that we got in our studio and just started trying to come up with songs, and that's actually how we came up with one of the one of the first songs that we wrote is "Getting Hot in Here." Um, and then he brought in Dexter Wansell and Barbara Walker. Well, and actually, Barbara Walker was singing with us at the time, but he brought in Dexter Wansell and Cynthia Biggs, who was a writing team, a music writing team at the time, and they wrote "Warm Weather," and then Grover wrote a couple of things. We wrote a couple of things, and before you know it, we had 10 songs for an album. So it's funny because the day we heard ourselves on the radio for the first time, we were I think Cedric's mother loaned us her car because we didn't have cars at the time. So we were washing her car because that was the stipulation. We had to clean up the car for her if we wanted to hold it. And then we were listening to WDAS in Philadelphia, and Warm Weather came on the radio, and we were like, whoa, that's us, So we were quite excited to hear ourselves on the radio for the first time.
And then the next year, you guys, it's a very interesting point that we're talking here in Black music in 82, because you're starting to get like this new thing called hip hop. And there's also electro and electro funk and boogie and post disco or whatever you want to call it. And you guys got this thing called Mount Airy Groove. And it doesn't necessarily sound like a jazz record, but there's still elements of jazz to it. And I do know there was a group called the Galaxy 5 that sort of covered.
Oh yeah, that's G5. That's my boys, Daryl Jones, and who else? Oh gosh, Mike Bowles. And yeah, there was a bunch of them that we knew. Yeah.
So what was that like to know that you guys were not only jazz musicians, but you at some point, I imagine you had to see somebody with some cardboard, break dancing to Mount Airy Groove. Just like number one, how did that song come about? And number two, what are your feelings about how that song was kind of like adopted as one of like Philly hip hop's first, true hits?
The song came about. We were actually in our studio, rehearsing for a show. And when we finished rehearsing, we just started messing around with some things. And we started playing some of the parts to what is now Mount Airy Groove. And we had left the tape running. So because we were recording ourselves at the time, making sure that we had all the parts right on what we were supposed to rehearse. We left the tape running, and when we started messing around. And once we finished messing around, we realized we left the tape running. We played it back. Parts of Mount Airy Groove were on that tape, so we kind of just took it. We actually liked what we heard, so we took it, molded it, and shaped it into what you hear now. And then it's funny that you mentioned Galaxy 5 because Daryl Jones, who was one of the DJs and a rapper at the time, did the rap version of Mount Airy Groove. Because we had heard Grandmaster Flash was putting out a rap version, so we had to hurry up and put one out before he put his out, so that it wouldn't cut the sales of our song. So
okay, so when you get to let's get to the latter parts of things, because I know different not Curtis, the Cedric left at one point, and Tony, you guys asked Tony to come aboard. So what was it like? How did you first discover Tony and ask him to join Pieces of a Dream?
I think James discovered Tony. He was playing in Cleveland, and Tony's father's band opened up for James the band James was playing with. Oh, Tony, you can tell it better than I can.
Yeah, Tony. Let's hear.
I was
Want to
playing
hear your
with my
side of the
father's
story.
band. My father's a musician and a music educator and retired. And I was playing in Akron, Ohio, actually at a place called Tangier, which was a great jazz venue for just a great music venue for a very long time. You know, Pieces has played there many times. And we were opening up for Mary Meadows. I was actually sick that day. I wasn't going to do it, but then my dad begged me to do it. We did our thing. I came off stage, and James Lloyd was in the audience. He's like, "Hey, man, you sounded great. You know, you got a card or something? How can I get in contact with you?" So I give him my card. And I'm like, "Man, this dude ain't going to call me." The next week, he called me, and I actually started recording on, I think it was Gerald Beasley's album. I started doing some background sax for his album. And then I did background sax for Najee's album. And forgive me, I can't remember the names of them so long ago. That's circa 2005, something like that. And then I started recording on Pieces album. My first Pieces album was Pillow Talk. And so that was actually my first time. The single Forward Emotion was my first time hearing myself on the radio. So I share in that in excitement, Kurt. That was pretty cool when you hear yourself. You ever see what was the show where they
the heartbeats, 5 heartbeats?
The 5 heartbeats, yeah, and they all hear themselves on the radio and you jump out of it. That's real. I mean, that's the kind of excitement you get when you hear yourself on the radio for 5 minutes, and then you're like scrutinizing everything you play from that moment forward. But but yeah, so James called me, and I recorded with Pieces from like 2006 to 2009, and then I finally started touring with them in 2009. And before this, I had toured with other artists, you know. So when I first came to Pieces, I'm gonna say one of the great things about Pieces of a Dream, about James and Kurt, they give everyone on stage their chance to shine. You know, they bring people into the band who are great players. There's not a slouch in this band. And they want you to do your thing. They want you to be at your best at all times. I'll say this, I'm not gonna name any names, but not all artists are like that. You know, I went out and I did a solo for one artist, and, you know, the crowd loved it and I killed it. And I came back, and after the show, I got chewed out because they said I was trying to steal the show from them, which is absolutely ridiculous. I just try to do my best, you know. And then my solo started getting shorter and shorter every gig after that. So by the time I get on stage with Pieces, I'm like traumatized. So the first show with Pieces was in Philly. It wasn't at the Dell. I forget where that was.
It was in Chester at a park.
Okay, yep, at the park. And then, so I'm like in my little box. I'm like, you know, I'm not going to overplay. I'm going to stay over here out of the way, you know, because I'm not trying to get chewed out again. And, you know, Curtis didn't like me because he was like, well, this isn't the guy I've heard on the albums. This isn't the guy, you know, you were telling me about, James. So Kurt called me and he's like, "No, man, we want you to do your thing. You know, be about your business on that stage." He said, "Don't hold back." You know, and from that point forward, I did it, you know, and Kurt loved me, and I've been in the group for 16 years now, and now I'm a partner in the group. So,
So I told him, I said, "Man, you know, when you get your time to shine, we got you here for a reason. And it's because of what I heard on the album, you know, and what you played for me on that first gig was not what I heard on the album. You know, that was nothing like what I heard." So I said, "Dude, we got you here for a reason. And that reason is for you to shine. So when it's your time to shine, dude, you know, don't be scared. Don't hold back, you know, because we pride ourselves as a group on having the best musicians we can get, you know." And I told him that, and I said, "You one of the best that I've heard, man. So, you know, let me hear that." And the next gig, he tore it up. And I said, "That's what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted to hear."
Yeah, and like I said in the beginning, man, I was listening to We Got This, and I got to Pieces of You, and Tony said I tried to put my foot in, and I said he absolutely did that. I mean,
yes, he did.
I just
That's one of my favorites.
I know I listened to that last night, and my mind was just like wow. And it was, you know, a great display of saxophonesmanship, as it were. And you know, just now that you guys are all on the same page, obviously, I mean, you know, it's been years since that happened, but you know, just I do want to ask you guys about the future of the music business in your opinion, because you guys are veterans. You guys have been around this business your whole lives.
Uh-huh.
And, you guys are recording with a label now, Shanahatchee. And, a lot of people are starting to, just forego the whole label thing. Do you think that's sustainable at all? And do you think that's a wise decision for people to not, just put out music, or is it sustainable for music, or wise decision for people to put out music independently?
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
So me being the youngest of the three,
show off.
I'm very progressive. Not that Kurt and James aren't. They are very progressive, obviously, as you hear in their music and things like that. But, they've been on labels for a long time. I personally, without being with Pieces of a Dream, have never been signed to a label. So I'm not attached to labels. And yes, I do see, people kind of foregoing, labels were essentially a bank, okay? Because artists couldn't afford to put out CDs by themselves, they needed distribution, they needed money to get in the studio and pay for studio time and things like that. That's where the record labels were good for, that's what they were good for. Now, 2025, 2026, and even a few years before, we record at home. I mean, we got this in our own personal studios. I did it right here in this studio. Curtis did it right in that studio where he's at. So number one, we don't have big studio fees anymore. Mm-hmm. Number two, there are radio guys now that you can pay, and you have your streaming distributions. There's a lot more available to us as people, rather than having to go through a record company for distribution and things like that. And now the trend is now, it's like people aren't even releasing full albums anymore. They're releasing singles, a single at a time. And what I love about that is you just brought up like Pieces of You, right? You love that song. That song is not going to be a single. So it's kind of, I won't say wasted, but in our mind, it's like, okay, this is a great song and we want it to be pushed too. You know what I mean? Like, I wish every song on that album could be a single, but that's just not realistic. So instead of writing a 10-song album and getting 2 singles out of it, and the rest just kind of go down by the wayside, now people are just putting out a single at a time. Like, okay, I put in work on this and you guys are going to pay attention to it. I love that. I love where we are in the recording industry now. Record labels are great for some things, but I also feel like we can, as artists, can do these things ourselves. Shineke's a great label. They've been good to Pieces of a Dream. Not talking bad about them, but I just think the future is here. Where we kind of like even banks. I mean, I can't tell you when the last time I was in a financial institution like a bank. I can't even tell you. Everything's online now. You know what I'm saying? I'm never like, oh, I got to go to the bank. It's probably been years since I've been in a bank. So it's just where we are now technologically, and it's the future.
I agree. I think technology has played a great part and a huge part in the advancement of not just music, but life itself at this point. Like you said, when was the last time we've been actually in a bank? So, or in a recording studio where we all just sat down and played together, and recorded that way. So, I mean, but don't get me wrong, because that has its advantages too, the old school way of doing it, because you can sit in there and play and vibe off of each other too. Yeah. But I mean, when we do it the way we do it now, like he said, it's so economically viable to do it this way. It doesn't incur a lot of bills. It doesn't incur a lot of money from the record company. Record company is not paying these huge amount of studio costs and stuff. And we can be creative whenever we want to be. Because I can come down in my studio at 2:00 in the morning if I get an idea and say, wow, you know what? I need to put that down. I mean, that's how I ended up doing a gospel album that I did for my pastor. I had an idea at 2:00 in the morning after watching a movie and was like, I need to put this down. So I came down and recorded it, and that was the start of his album. So, the way technology has progressed these days has been such a advantage to us that, you know, I can't see us doing it any other way now. You know what I mean? So, and plus the fact that I can start a track here, send it to Tony, he do his part, he can send it to James, James do his part, and we all will have written that song together, but not being together. You know what I mean? So, you know, I just love the way technology has, you know, kind of grown and allowed us to do things that we could never have done back when we started.
You know what?
Being the musicians that we are, we have learned to adapt and kind of evolve with music, you know, and that's one of the reasons that I think that people still see us as relevant.
And I'm gonna add one last thing, one big, huge, and I would say maybe the biggest advantage to putting out your own music is you own the rights to music. You know, a lot of times when you're on a label, they own those masters for years
until they're paid back, right?
Until they're paid back. Now, when you do it yourself, you don't have that.
And I find that interesting that you bring that up, Tony, because I know Kurt remembers these guys. I know he's probably cool with Steve Green and Gene Robinson to break.
Oh yeah, man.
I had them on earlier this summer.
Time.
Yeah, I had them on earlier this summer, and they told me about how Kay Williams, who you know, transitioned a while back, worked with Daft Punk on a sample for them, and that Steve and Gene said it's still a financial windfall for them today. So Steve's advice, you know, to young musicians was to make sure you own your masters and the publishing and all the rights to that. Just for people who are not familiar, just what does that mean when you own, you know, the masters and the publishing to your music?
That means you make all of the money yourself. You know, you don't have to, like with record companies in the contracts, usually they own the masters for a certain amount of time. So that means nothing can happen with those masters without their say so. Okay. And that's your music. Even though it's your music, they own it. So nothing can happen with it without their say so for the allotted time that they own those masters. If you own them yourself, people have to come to you to use your music. And that means you can get paid yourself off of using the music and off of other people using the music. And that money doesn't go to the record company or whoever owns the masters. So it means you own the rights, you own the publishing, you own you always own your own writing for royalties, but the publishing you don't always own. So, and the mechanicals you don't always own.
So for, you know, to put a bow on this, just when you got because when you look at the landscape of music today, the popular stuff, you don't see a lot of bands, you don't see a lot of instrumentalists. I mean, everything just seems to be done by computer nowadays. And as someone,
tell you why? Want to tell you why? Because people don't go to music school anymore.
I was actually gonna say that. I feel like music education has just gone by the wayside. And you know, being I'm not particularly super young, but at 44, I can still remember, you know, still going, you know, like certain bands like Earth, Wind and Fire still doing stuff, Commodores, you guys can function on and on, still playing instruments. But when you look at the landscape of music today, do you think there will come a point where we circle back to people playing live instruments again, or do you think that ship has sailed?
Well, I think that people have not stopped playing live instruments. I think that people, with the evolution of rap and hip hop, and the creation of loops, which is basically music that's already pre-put together. I think that has changed the landscape of recording. People are doing a lot more artists are doing stuff, are being discovered from things they've done in their basement. You know what I mean? And I think that kids are still in school playing instruments, learning how to read, learning how to write music. I just think that there has become a different balance of it now, you know, and believe me, I think, and rap is definitely an artistry. because you still have to sit down and write your lyrics, but when it comes to actually writing notes on a music paper, on a music sheet, that's not something that everybody has the talent to do. Or when it comes to playing keyboards or guitar or drums or bass or sax, that's not something that everybody has a gift to do. So, people stay in their lanes. You know what I mean? Rappers stay in their lane. They rap. They do what they do best. We as instrumentalists, we stay in our lanes. We do what we do best. So I don't think, I don't think any branch of it is dying out. I think it's just evolved into more types of different music.
I think so. You and I are the same age, Chris. I'm 44, but I was a music educator for 13 years. And what I can tell you is that bands are getting smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. And it's not because there's not an interest. It's because that when these school districts are low on money, the arts are the first thing to go.
Every time.
Yep.
There's not enough money for instruments. They got to make sure they got pads for the football team. And not that that's bad. You know what I mean? People make great livings and gain a lot through sports, but a lot of times sports are the driving entity at that school, especially high schools and things like that. They get the money. I think that if our country does not turn that around, I think that, not that it's going to be gone, but I think that it's going to be very hard to find a school where music as an art form is prominent. Like, you're going to have to travel, even in middle school. Like, you got a middle school age kid, they're going to have to travel to get into a school that actually has a band. I think a lot of schools are going to lose that. Mm-hmm. And that hurts the musicality of everything, whether it's rap or pop or hip hop, and jazz. It's going to change everything, and now they have AI. And I don't know if you've heard these AI renditions of these rap songs. You know what I mean?
Oh, dear God. No, I try to avoid those at every chance I get.
I'm going to tell you, they're kind of hot.
Yeah, they are. Some of them are.
Like, man, this is killing. But there will always be a limitation to that. You cannot, just my instrument in particular, saxophone, it's going to be hard to repeat how we breathe, how we accent, things like that. It is so internal and so organic that I'm not really worried about AI taking that over and, there being AI saxophonists, Billboard beating, you know what I mean? So I do think that the instrumentalists are going to survive this. But like Kurt said, you also have to be willing to evolve. I do know that there are artists incorporating AI into their music. And that's fine, that's the new thing, but as far as schools and education, we have to take a turn there. And, maybe some of us more fortunate artists get back to even the school districts that you went to, get back to that band program, buy some instruments, for some kids. So that's what I'd like to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are two festivals that we do yearly, well, every other year, that actually give their proceeds go to giving instruments to kids at a high school level, junior high school level, and making sure that these kids have at least an instrument to practice on if they want to do music, because a lot of kids are underprivileged at these that go to some of these schools, and some of the promoters and stuff want to make sure that kids have instruments, so that they can grow up and have a future like we did. You know what I mean? We didn't know when I first started playing drums, I was 8 years old. So I didn't know that this was going to turn into a career for me like it did, but it's funny because I started playing drums and my grandfather asked me one day when he was a music professor at Temple University, he started their jazz improv program.
Ooh.
So, and his name was Curtis Harmon also. But he asked me one day, he said, so what do you want to do with your music? He said, you play drums. you do great at that, but what do you want to do with your music? And I had really never thought about that at the time that he asked me that. So then he ended up teaching me harmony and theory. I ended up taking college harmony and theory when I was in high school. So, because he was teaching me on his own. And so by the time I got to high school, I already knew, how to put chords together. I knew intervals, I knew my harmonics and stuff. So, but it enabled me as a drummer to still be able to play keyboards and write music, So, and not every drummer can do that, but it made me a little more of a well-rounded musician, just by him asking me that question. Because I want to write music. You know what I mean? No, I don't want to just play drums. So,
All right. So where can everybody find Pieces of a Dream? Where you guys are touring next. If they want to follow you on social media, feel free to, let folks know where they can catch up with you guys.
Good, Tom.
Piecesofadream.net. It's our website. Our tour, things up there. Like we said, it's our 50th anniversary tour. And we're very excited about that. We have some really cool shows coming up. We're doing Brian Culbertson's Napa Valley. We're doing the Aloha Jazz Fest in Hawaii. We're doing Warren Hills Jazz in Mexico this year. So we have a lot of, then after that, we're doing the Smooth Jazz Cruise. We're doing the Soul Train Cruise. We got a lot of stuff happening. Yeah. So
we're doing also Valentine's Day in Dallas.
Dallas. That's our next one. Yeah. So get on piecesofadream.net and on social media, just look up at Pieces of a Dream.
And you can also visit us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yeah, my boss for my day job lives in Dallas. I think I'm gonna tell him to go check you guys out for Valentine's Day.
Good.
Please do.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that is Kurt Harmon. That is Tony Watson Jr. They are Pieces of a Dream. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, and thank y'all for watching this edition of On the Groove Line. Greatly appreciate y'all. As always, contact information for myself and Pieces of a Dream will be in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and tap that notification bell so you get notified of all the new videos like this great interview that drop on this channel. And don't forget to like and comment on the videos because I do talk back in the comments. So thank you guys for riding with us on the Groove Line. And until the next time we ride, may you find the groove or may the groove find you.
Peace.
Peace.